The amount of information that gets passed around before we hit record is impressive, by the way. We should always be recording.
And it's always super important information.
Good morning, gents. How you doing today?
Great.
You have a wonderful looking coffee cup today.
Yeah.
It is delicious. And I'm holding it with my left hand so that everyone can see the amazing
Jesus.
logo.
I know I talk about this every week, but there's
video as well. There is a video as well.
It's a
you have
podcast.
to go to our
and
YouTube
the first
channel.
thing we do is stop listening on that. What do they call it? Spotify? Is that what the kids call
So
it?
those people that are listening on Apple, even though Apple is a great platform, should absolutely go to YouTube and check out Lars's shirt right now. It is on brand, and he intentionally is covering the logo with the bottom of his screen.
No, he's not. It's full screen.
No, I'm not. It's full screen.
He's just
here.
cropped
Let's
for
go.
you. Tony, you need to clap so you can synchronize all of our audio real quick.
Preamble.
We've got to get into the preamble. Are you ready?
There we go.
Clap, Tone.
Look at that. It wasn't even when we were waiting.
Let's go.
Hey, this is Kevin from IDN. You are currently listening to the Unlocked podcast with Tony, Lars, and Chad. Let's go, guys.
You know, Kevin might be. He's pushing Uncle Glenn for number one fan.
Yes, it's a tight race, really.
You know, I've given away a couple coffee cups because I've got a couple Canadian fans. So, that's been big. But yeah, Kevin's been our guy here. We have a pretty substantial ongoing chat with on LinkedIn.
And the bingo board he created is on point, really.
Yeah, impressive.
We should throw that up on the blog for sure.
Are you charging tariffs for those coffee cups when you're handing them out? Because how does that work?
I don't know. What are you guys doing for tariffs these days? It seems to change every day. But,
yeah,
we're having world wars, and then we're
does.
just sending out tweets like, "Oh yeah, the war is canceled," and then it's hard to keep track of what you donkeys are doing down there.
Well, it's true. Hey, speaking of our YouTube channel, a couple of comments that we've had over the last few days. Would you like to go
From a viewer? Yeah,
viewer. Yeah, a watcher posted on here and said, Jeremiah Johnson a couple of days ago was listening or watching way back to episode 44 on price versus value. A masterclass in value in the security. Yeah,
that was a great episode.
It was actually a very well watched episode.
No, I think it was Chad's. It might have been mine.
There's no way it was.
Certainly wasn't yours. We know
not
that.
Really. Do we have ownership over an episode? It's just we
the good ones,
together.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Like the bad ones, yes.
Yeah.
The messy middle ones, no.
He said, "Love this episode. We've always itemized everything on the quote. The one thing that we do not provide on quotes or on invoices is direct part numbers. We get a lot of smaller jobs where we are selling a specific type of lock and the part number on the quote and the invoice. Then we had a meeting with the decision makers and they were showing us online prices for less. So this is why we are charging so much more." And he goes on and says, "So my question to you, Chad, is are you putting the direct part numbers on your quotes or is it an internal part number or just a description of the part?" So a quick answer on that, Jeremiah, it is an internal part number with a full description, but we do not list the manufacturer part number on there. Not specifically. I mean, I think probably historically for some of the same reasons that you were talking about, where people go Google it online. I don't really think that matters much anymore. From people are going to be able to find the part number anyway, so I don't know how much it really is saving you to not list it. That's my personal opinion. And again, that kind of goes back to the whole conversation of if people are looking to buy it online, they're probably not your customer. So I wouldn't waste a whole lot of time trying to convince them because you're not going to win, would be my thought. What do you guys think on that?
I don't see a lot of benefit of having the part number on there. We don't do it. But I mean, if somebody wants to Google it, they just copy and paste the description that's going to be on there anyway.
The only benefit, we put our short numbers on there. So like at least we'll get customers calling us saying, "Hey, I need another one of these," and then there's a way to reference it and identify it. But it's a different part number than what's online.
Yeah. Like we see internally, we have the SKU and part number on absolutely everything. Just outbound, we don't bother. Tony, I'm glad to hear there's somebody cutting keys in your sauna today.
I'm impressed that no one's
you've
ever
got-
noticed that because
we notice it every week.
Every
50
episode,
offices.
This would not be a locksmithing podcast without the sound of cutting keys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Can
great.
you whistle that for us?
I could.
Colin from American Lock and Key commented a couple of days ago and said, "Great episode, guys. Super insightful as always, except for
As
Tony."
always?
That was a really strange. Again, really appreciate you taking the time to do the podcast. Colin's fantastic. Actually, as we're
Was it Colin
this
Hokinson? Is that who it was?
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
He was so as we're recording this, Colin is actually going to be coming to visit with his operations manager in a couple of days to our business.
No
and spend
kidding.
a couple of days with us.
Had a good,
Oh,
really
right
good
on.
conversation with Colin a couple days ago, talking about some acquisitions. He's doing some cool things down in Colorado Springs and got a lot, making some noise down there. So it was a good conversation. It was fun getting to know him and, catching up with him.
Jane
that was-
from
Oh, yeah. Jane, go ahead.
oh sorry,
Another
Jane-
avid watcher.
Yep, Jane from Graw Security, part of Uncle Glenn's clan. She waved. So
Hey, Jane.
hey, Jane.
Good to see you.
Yes,
Does anyone know the origin of why Uncle Glenn became Uncle Glenn?
I think it was his sage advice during COVID.
Yeah.
He
and
was
then-
just kind of the calm.
I think
he was like-
you two kind of started it. One of
Yeah.
you two. It was
I
probably,
just don't remember why.
I'm sure Chad started calling him that.
He just
and you
seems
stole
like an
it and
uncle.
just made it
He
yours.
is. Just a
A couple of weeks ago,
Always
Uncle
old
Glenn
uncle.
actually commented and said all three of you seem to be able to find what people do well and how you can help them improve. Most people can identify shortcomings, but strong leaders can see the good in others. That's very kind. That was from that episode we did, episode 66, The Unique Factor.
You know,
that was our leadership
I know,
session.
Chad, that was one of your probably least comfortable episodes.
Yeah. Mhm.
It is also probably the one I've had the most comments on.
Oh, yeah.
I've had, I'm not exaggerating, I've probably had 25 people individually reach out and talk about it and,
Wow.
yeah, and have them talking about the unique. And it actually came up yesterday. I was talking with my partner, Matt, and, and he said, that's what I did something and I was talking about something. He's like, that's what I was trying to explain. What are you talking about? It's like, you're unique is your ability to tell that story and get everyone on understand what you're trying to articulate, which is not exactly what I just did. But anyway, it was, the unique episode. I know we've probably got a bit of a spike. And that was 66.
Yeah, and the other one, that was episode 66. The other one that got a lot of views online and got some comments as well was the delegation paradox. That was episode 64. Got a couple of comments on that. One person said, love the preamble track. So it's always a fan favorite. And let's see, Scott Edelstein said, delegating isn't about disappearing. It's about figuring out where you belong. And then Alec Berger from out in California also said, hey, how often are you doing one-on-ones with management? Assuming it's once a week. Would love to hear more about your expectations towards the management. So I meet with my operations manager every Monday morning. That is kind of our rhythm. I also talk to him on a regular basis, but we have a kind of more formalized one-on-one every Monday morning. What about you guys?
Same thing. I meet with our operations manager every Monday and talk to him multiple times throughout the day. So,
yeah, I don't have one-on-ones with any of our management team. That's Matt's job.
Yeah.
But
do you have one-on-ones with Matt?
I do.
Is your part?
Yeah. We have a daily cadence and check-in generally, and I do have a weekly with our controller. So Matt and I sit with our controller and go through budget and forecast and just financial update and health every week. It seems to work well. I think Matt has a weekly one-on-one with all of his managers. He's changed it. What's worked a lot better is he spent a lot of his time preparing for these meetings, and they were running like half an hour, and there was lots. And I think, Tony, is probably after conversation with you, because I've seen your calendar where you basically have 45 hours of meetings every week. But Matt decided he's just going to stop doing that, and he just shows up and he says, "I'm available." It's like office hours. I got 15 minutes, and bring what you want. And if you don't want anything, we're not going that way. But he kind of pushes it along and says, "Bring what you need from me," and that's been working out quite well. But it is a weekly thing as well.
So I guess to expand on that, Zach, who's our operations manager, has weekly meetings with branch managers, and then his team, and then those are meeting. Branch managers are meeting with their teams, I think, once a week, and then field supervisor, project managers, those are meeting at least once a month with their teams. Is kind of the way that breaks down. Cool. So that's some of the comments that we've received on our YouTube channel. Thanks for leaving those. And again, as just a reminder, if you haven't already subscribed, and so you can get the new episode every week, we have been consistent, at least, with new episodes. This one is episode 71. So quite a few there to go check out. The corresponding video is available on our YouTube channel, and all of those links are available on our website at unlockedpodcast.com.
I expect a surge today in our watchership because I actually shared one of the videos, and I shared the link to the pod today on Instagram and said that most of them are absolutely turds, but this one is probably not. So I mean, that's
raving.
That's high praise.
Something I just realized is we haven't been doing introductions for like the past 15 episodes. So I guess if you want to find out more about us, go to our website.
Yeah. Unlockedpodcast.com. Is that right?
Yeah. Something like that.
Cool.
So
I'm Lars, that's Chad, that's Tony.
Yeah.
Okay,
exactly.
Carrying on. Clap.
Clap. So at the end of last episode, I kind of tried to set up what this episode was going to talk about, and it's about the messy middle. So we're all in stages of business growth, and it's and so the messy middle is based off of this topic today is kind of based off of a book that some of us have read and some of us hasn't, called The Messy Middle: Finding Your Way Through the Hardest Part and the Most Crucial Part of Business Growth. And it's by Scott Belsky, if I'm pronouncing that name correctly. If I'm not, then sorry.
He's most certainly not listening. So
he could be one of our 12 watchers.
He should be, but he's not.
He may get a Google alert and say, "Hey, somebody's talking about my book." Anyway, and you could send us a couple of copies if you want to, Scott. We'll take.
I could use one because I have not read it. So
really, that'd be why you were confused about what this was. Okay.
You have read it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, this ought to be fun.
Every business owner should read The Messy Middle.
Yeah. Any grown-up that I know has read this book.
Funny enough, didn't make our top 12 list last week.
So. See, there it is, right there. That's another nice podcast thing. Yeah, I didn't really like the book, but sorry there, Scott. But it was an interesting concept. It was recommended by a friend named Dustin, who said this was a really good book for him.
Yeah. I read this book several years ago and resonated with a lot of the elements in it. And it's I think one of the opening lines of the book talks about how you, as a business owner, don't know. You're gonna be okay, Tony? Do we need to send in help again?
I'll be okay.
Okay.
Good.
Stay focused.
As a business owner, you inevitably have a messy middle. And we don't really know that it's happening until it's over.
Can attest to that,
right? And so, but the other kind of it is it happens over and over and over again. So if you're in a bit of a growth mode, you may come out of the messy middle because you've established something and you've figured something out, and then you're now into the next messy middle because you're into the next growth phase. And so there's a lot of elements around.
Perfect. God, we're running a tight ship today.
Yeah.
We got key cutting. Chad's dog joined us.
How's Winston doing these days?
Well, he's pretty angry right now. So he's
activated,
creating a level of excitement. Yes, go ahead.
Tone, if I actually remember talking to you about this book as I was reading it, because
yes,
I think you just made the Minneapolis Lock and Key acquisition. Or maybe it was the rebrand to Assured.
The Assured acquisition. It was in 2019. I actually remember talking to you about this too.
Yeah, and I remember saying something along the lines of, your next few years are going to be an absolute disaster. It's going to be
Little
hell
did
because
you
everything's
know
going to be
that
a
the
mess.
pandemic was about to start, but
Also true. Also true.
But yes,
it was,
no, you were spot on.
Yeah, and because we had just gone through that, we'd done an
Mm-hmm.
acquisition, we'd started a door company, and it just everything broke. The systems that we were doing, the structure we had in place, it was mayhem, and no one really knew what the other half was doing. It was just it was a.
Actually had a conversation with Colin about this a couple of days ago, and kind of my lessons learned, and I didn't really listen to you or didn't know what I was getting into, or like you said, I was already into it, so it didn't matter. It was too late. But when it comes to growing and scaling, there's a tipping point probably around 20 to 25 employees. We happened to leapfrog and went from 22 to 32 in about a year. And there's that tipping point right around the 25 where you start needing to build out a second layer of management. Or a layer of management, sorry, one layer of management. And we did not have that structure in place or those thoughts in place. We did not plan for it. And my biggest input to him was figure out what that path looks like first, plan it ahead of time. When we started doing acquisitions, it sounds naive, but it was the truth. And I'm not afraid to admit it. We did it from a financial standpoint and did not think about the operational inefficiencies that may come, or efficiencies that can be created if you plan for them. And not having done acquisitions before, I didn't really think about that piece. I was looking at the financial side of it because that's my background, and said, hey, this financially makes sense, and didn't think, okay, I should also form a strategy to figure this out. And I think whether you're doing that growth organically or acquisitively, you need to figure out the strategy to grow and scale. And what does that team look like? Not just from a team standpoint, but a process standpoint, even a facility standpoint. How do we grow our facility to support this team?
Yeah. Where are we going to have everyone sit?
And these are not things we thought about. And again, it seems dumb to say that, but it's true. We were consistently thinking about what is the next step, and we weren't thinking about what is the step 3 steps ahead. And I think we referenced the book 10x is greater than 2x last episode, and that really helps. I wish I had read that about 7 years ago, because if you think about what does it look like when we're 10x, and then walk back to get to what are the next steps to get there, that really helps to figure out the strategy to avoid that. Well, I shouldn't say avoid, because I don't think you can ever avoid it, but at least minimize the chaos that comes with the messy middle of having a plan of what that looks like and what the next step is to get there, and thinking beyond the next step.
So, and sorry, and it's going to be personality dependent as well. I'm obviously a lot less analytical than you would be, Tony, and your forethought and planning is going to be a lot more intentional and methodical than mine is naturally. But in that case, I didn't. That was the problem, right? And not to, maybe should let you finish your point, but it just, I mean, in general, and I think kind of the takeaway that I got from that was understanding that I was like, hey man, it's going to work out. I don't really care. We'll figure it out as we go. And that worked for me. I now know, looking back, years, it's like, ooh, I just created an absolute hurricane for everyone around me.
Yes.
And, I was like, oh, it'll work out. Don't worry. And it did. But I can't imagine how they were feeling going through that absolute mess.
Yep.
It was probably a lot.
So I kind of jumping into this a little bit from some of the descriptions of the book, and I just want to use that as some, I guess, elements to weave into the conversation. But they talk a lot about milestones versus inch stones,
right?
And it's wild because as business owners and entrepreneurs and people that are going to find themselves that are starting or developing a process or a business, right? They get a huge dopamine hit out of starting something and getting something moving and the excitement around all of that. And then typically you have some type of satisfaction as you kind of conclude the process. Hey, we built this thing and that's great. And again, kind of that messy middle part is the chaos that could potentially ensue in the middle. And I think, Lars, to your point earlier, it's going to be personality dependent around how you deal with that chaos. It's funny, we did an update on our culture index with our team yesterday, and some people enjoy that chaos and that unknown. Many others, like you said, do not, and it's just a source of misery for them.
It's about half and half.
Yeah.
In fact, as we know, it's a
Mhm.
normal distribution. Yeah.
So thinking in terms of milestones and inchstones. So give you a little bit of concept here. So a milestone is like you would hit $10 million in revenue, and an inchstone is that we successfully converted 3 clients to a particular product, right? So more like kind of lead measures versus like
Mm.
Check on the bingo
Anyway.
scorecard for sure.
The thing, like from a leadership perspective, trying to make the things that kind of are invisible visible to your team, so they kind of understand where they're headed. So the question here for both of you guys is, when you're talking about trying to stay in the course and understanding the difference between endurance and kind of pigheadedness, like ignoring that failing system. What how do you know when it's a time to kind of pivot out of a process versus just keep pushing through it? And a good analogy that I would go back to a lot of times is you buy a car, or maybe it's one of your work vans and it's paid for, and you are paying $4,000 a year in repairs, and it's sitting on the side of the road every other week, and you have to get it towed and all kinds of other stuff, but it's paid for, and we're going to keep throwing money at it. At what point do you walk away from that van and sell it and get a new one? And that's not the question, but in your business, from processes, at what point in time do you know, hey, how do we just walk away from this, or do we just keep pushing harder and get through it?
I think a really good question to ask the owner of that process, or anybody really, is why do we do this process? If the answer is because we've always done it this way, it's probably a pretty good time to reevaluate it. If the answer is rooted in logic and the person can explain, this is why we do this, and this is why it makes sense, and this is why it should stay, and there's some logic behind it, I think then there's a case that doesn't need to be evaluated. But if the answer is because this is how I've always done it, there's a good chance you need to reevaluate it.
Yeah, I thought about this a lot because there's a lot of emotion involved when, especially if you're involved in a process. Let's take a concrete example here. We spend a bunch of time to map out our sales process. Okay, and this is the way we have to do our sales process. Okay, now I was actively involved in it, so it's now done. No one change it. Don't touch it, because I was involved. I'm emotionally attached to it. But one of the things that I constantly ask myself is, are we still doing it this way because it's right? Or is it because, like my ego will be damaged if we stall?
We can't touch this process because Lars did this, and
right. And then internally, like, oh well, am I admitting I was wrong, or what is the emotion that kind of goes through that? We have the other battle that happens internally. It's like our whole, I'll say society. It's like that persistence. You can do anything if you put your mind to it. Just keep going, right? And that's how. It's like we take a lot of pride in that.
Yeah.
And at some point, we just kind of get lost in like, we talked last episode about quitting, right?
Yeah.
Kind of ties in very nicely to this. It's like, are we persisting in this because we think it's the right thing to do, or because it is the right thing to do? And that gets lost on us lots when we're in this situation where we just like, oh, keep doing it because that's the way we do it.
Yeah. I'm pretty intentional around our office of kind of using the term "no process is sacred," and because I don't want, I am always fearful of what you just said. If I was involved in a process, or someone in a leadership position set up this process, then just don't question it, because that's the best way. So I always say no process is sacred. We should check it. But we also have a lot of visual reminders around that as well. I'm not in the studio today, but there's typically a sign over my shoulder that says "always improving." And I've talked about this before. I wear this kind of cuff on my wrist that has engraved "always improving" on it. And so it's a constant reminder for me to think, is this the best way? Should we be, what can we do to make make this better. And so it's just kind of a mentality that we've tried to approach. Nothing sacred. Let's always improve and work on building it. But
yes, the obvious thing that goes wrong with this
is there are some processes that I would say that I would become pigheadedness or ignoring a failing system is if it's not painful enough to make the change. So there's several processes, I'm sure, in our business that are not good and need to be improved. But when I look at the grand scheme of things, these 10 I would put more painful or more priority to put attention to. They have not become painful enough that we need to change them. And that's where I would find myself ignoring a failing system until it just becomes ultimately painful.
And painful might mean money, and painful, like or it might just mean emotional.
Money, it could be time, or it could be.
It's one of the, I'm literally going through this right now where I'm frustrated that our sales process is the exact same thing it's been forever.
Yeah.
And how I know that this is a problem is generally our solutions team, our sales team, is the most experienced kind of high-end people we have on our team. And we've lost a couple of them due to burnout.
Sure.
And the burnout, is not coming from providing like the core function of the job to provide a solution for a customer. It's more the other stuff that comes with it. None of which is really part of their job, but it's, making sure that the customer, we have the right guy going to the right job with the right hardware. And if something changes, all that other stuff. And what to me, I look back and it's like, well, that's the process we've built.
Yeah.
And that's what's causing it. So for me, like the alarm bell is, we go through and ask everyone, like, how's everyone feel? Give me a 1 to 10. And we consistently get lower numbers if you're getting a consistent lower number from a group of people, that's a pretty good indication that your process is probably garbage.
Yeah.
Because they're spending a lot of time doing stuff they don't want to do.
Yeah. Oh, you should also ask on the scale of 1 to 4. It will give you a lot better.
Yeah, 1 to 4 is a dumb scale, so I don't do that.
I was thinking of one of our.
That's a shout out to an episode probably a year ago. Yeah, but only a true watcher would know that reference.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking back on one of our processes that we have recently changed because it was not good, but it wasn't painful enough previously to change.
Yep.
So one of them
didn't hurt enough.
I'll try to do what.
Yeah, it didn't hurt enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll try to summarize it in the shortest way as I can, because that's always a challenge for me. But we have customers that are on net terms. We do work for them and send them an invoice, and they pay us, somewhere between 15 and 365 days. And then we have another set of customers that we go out and do work for, and we have deemed them as COD or collect. We do the work and they're supposed to pay us. Well, years ago, we stopped actually asking people to pay us when we finished the job, as that would be a lot. And so we had because we built a tool that would automatically charge, and it was more effective. We were moving away from a even more painful process where you had to have a card reader or all kinds of other tools and utensils to be able to collect money. So we tried to make it easier for customers to pay us. And what that ultimately did was created this kind of debt log of invoices that didn't have terms on them. So they were not customers that we would invoice. They were customers that we.
How did this work?
Gave a request.
Go do work for random people and just say, pay us when you feel it's right to pay us.
And they didn't have terms. So then that was they get to dictate how often and how long it takes. And then because of that process, it was also creating this other clutter where somebody had to watch a different set of data to see when those people paid. And so we just recently, like within the past 30 days, said, hold on a second. Why are we deeming these differently? Because it seems like this is an invoice that just doesn't have terms associated with it, and the terms are due on receipt. and then it was simplify our process to get everything into our financial software and keep everything moving. And it was a bit of a battle back and forth because we had to break a little bit of a mindset of what deemed that finished work as an invoice or a cash sale effectively. And the reason that we finally changed it was because it did become painful enough that queue had become large enough with a comma and multiple digits that were kind of challenging. And so we've made moves on that. But it had been that way for probably for the past 6 or 8 years, where we have just kind of ignored it because it was a failing system, but it had not become painful. Once we had visibility around it, it was painful enough that we had to make a change.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've, the saying, I've probably talked about this on the podcast, the dog on the nail, many times, but I use it all the time. It's, effectively, if the pain of changing is more than the pain of not, people generally don't do anything.
Yeah.
And so either you have to, and sometimes the pain's hidden. And, I kind of feel my job as a leader is kind of to point it out. I literally had a conversation yesterday where I had a moment with our sales manager. So, and I'm going to get into the weeds just a little bit here, but this is, I think anyone in our industry could maybe take this for some value and maybe reconsider how they're doing things. But generally speaking, we get a phone call and they say, hey, I want a thing, or I want you to come fix a thing. And we say, okay, the vast majority of our industry are all visual people. And they say, I can't really tell you what you need or how much it's going to be unless I go there and have a look at it. So I hop in my car and I drive across the town and I go and have a look at the thing and I say, okay, well, this is what you need. And I put together all these widgets because this is how to do it right would be. And then I type it up into a computer, or maybe I'm slick enough to do it while I'm there. And then I send it to the customer. And then they say, no, sorry, that's too much. So we just spent, $200 or $300 probably going to do this work with that's generally how our industry does these. And so we've toyed with, okay, well, maybe we charge for quotes. Well, ask any customer what they feel, their reaction to being charged to give that quote, right? Oh, well, maybe it's a deposit. Anyway, so what I'm proposing and what we're trying to roll out was I was trying to say to my sales manager is like, what I want to do is, we're just using card access is per door, it is a flat rate.
Sure.
And, so when a customer calls and says, I want card access on 4 doors, we say, this is the price times 4, and that's it. Does that work? And if they say yes, we say, perfect. Here's the invoice. Then we drive across the city, spend 3 hours getting everything ready and doing all that stuff. And of course, because we've got the sale, I'm trying to figure out a way to, how do we get more sales without spending more time? Because right now our model is just more time.
So how has that been received?
About as well as you'd expect. But so we've talked about this 3 or 4 times.
Sure. I've heard you talk about it at least 8.
Yeah. And
how is it received by the customers though?
By the customer, well, they love it.
Okay.
The customers are going to love it. Your team is probably the ones that are pushing back because
what if this happens?
Yeah.
And you know what the difference was for me? So yesterday I finally had this aha moment. So I've had this conversation multiple times. It's got heated. I've had this probably 3 times this week.
Yeah.
And my sales manager called me on his way home yesterday and said, hey, thanks for explaining it that way. It finally has kind of clicked to me how this makes sense. Because he was explaining all of the details of why it wouldn't work. And I kept, just like, well, I don't care. I don't care if that doesn't work. But, what I wasn't doing well enough was explaining, like, what are you scared of? It's like, well, our margin target is supposed to be this.
Correct.
It's going to be a mess. And then if it's a mess, I have to clean it up. And he just rattled off those things. And really what it came down to is I just said, okay, if this goes wrong, it's on me, right? I'm willing to take this risk. And ultimately, if this goes wrong, I'm the one that has to pay for it.
Yeah. And
So
then that
it was-
alleviated the concern.
Yeah. And he's like, oh, well, that makes it a lot easier. So that's just one of those processes that we found in the messy middle. It worked 15 years ago, but to get to that next level, we didn't want to change it. We're hesitant to change it because we got a lot of ego and a lot of experience in it, but the pain is there. I have our high-end guys quitting. We are spending a lot of money and only winning half of the quotes that we send out. So we're working for free half the time. And it's like the pain is real now. So it's time to dive in. But it hasn't been easy. It's been a little messy, so to speak.
For sure. So one of the other elements kind of in a messy middle, and this one actually I feel a lot, the kind of false positive. So I think every business is in a growth perspective will get this at some point. If you haven't already, then you will. Where something happened, like, so you can term it as like kind of a lucky market trend or lucky market tailwind, just something that happened out of the blue, and then it was a good result for you. And then you have to figure out, well, is this a scalable, repeatable thing? So I'll give you an example. Back in 2016, we'll just call it 2016 because I don't remember the exact year. We were awarded a $1.2 million bid for a very large hospital key system. And at that point in our company, our annual revenue was right around $2.5 million. We were cruising towards 3 million. So one contract increased our revenue by 50%. That is what there were a lot of elements. So I wouldn't say it was just a lucky market tailwind. There was a lot of elements that went into that, but $1 million contract on repeat is not something that you can scale.
Right.
And so what we found, we didn't know this at the time, right? So we performed on that, got it all taken care of. Well, then when it comes to 2016, 2017, 2018, how do you follow that up? Because you just had this crazy spike. You had to scale up your resources. You had to change a lot of your business operations. Well, how do we backfill that over the next couple of years, that additional $1 million in revenue? And I learned in the rear of that we didn't have a scalable system to support that. And so,
oh boy,
yes, thinking through the growth part was like, okay, how do we set up our systems so that when these things happen, how do we bring it in and absorb it and do the work? But then how do we also set up scalable processes so this can be on repeat? So the question for you guys, how do you distinguish those when they're actually happening in the real world? How do you distinguish those? Because I didn't have that visibility then. And then how do you know that you need to build that then versus just kind of enjoying the high tide at that moment? How do you actually build a scalable system to support it?
When you say you didn't have visibility that it wouldn't be repeatable, what do you mean by that? I mean, surely you didn't expect to get $1 million projects every year.
No, I didn't expect to get $1 million. I just had, I guess, a perspective of, well, we'll get more larger projects. So maybe it may be 4 $250,000 projects the next year, but or assumed that there would be that additional $1 million in revenue just on repeat naturally. And but we didn't have the actionable systems in place to go get it, right? And let me say that very clearly. We didn't have a outside sales team that was going out looking for any size opportunities. It was, we had a lot of effort working towards that one and got it. And then it was like, well, we don't have anything else coming in a pipeline to backfill that when it's done. Would be maybe a better way to say that.
I can see the hamster running here on tone. I love this.
No, I don't.
That was the awkward silence bingo.
It seems, I think the biggest thing you have to be aware of is what are your consistent trends in your business? I'm trying to figure out how to say this without it sounding obvious, because like you have to look at your revenue and your historical numbers and look at like what is consistent and like you just have to be cognizant of the fact of what is predictable and what isn't. And I think so that the analogy that, not analogy, but one thing we've noticed recently is our service revenue is incredibly predictable. It is very consistent year over year over year. The only increases we have been having, because we don't focus on growing our service revenue at the moment, is our rate increases. Our actual ticket volume has been very, very predictable. Where our project sales are very much so cyclical and they're just ebb and flow with the wind, it seems sometimes. And one of our big focuses right now is trying to make that sales piece of our business more predictable. And I think the way you have to do that, and not to beat a dead horse, is with lead and lag measures. You have to focus on the actions you can take, because while you can control outcomes, you can't just say, I want a $10 million project, bring it to me. You have to say, what are the actions that we did to get that $1 million project, and what do we need to do more of to increase the likelihood that we are going to get more of those? The biggest thing you can control is the actions. One of the best analogies I heard around this a couple months ago on a podcast I was listening to at the beginning of the new year about goal setting. And when it comes to goal setting, yes, you want to focus on outcomes, but you can't necessarily control that. If you want to lose 20 pounds, don't set a goal that I want to lose 20 pounds. Set a goal that I want to exercise 5 days a week. You can control exercising 5 days a week. And if you do those things, what are the inputs that are going to lead to you losing 20 pounds? We've talked about, Lars, you're being consistent, and you're saying the input that I want to focus on is I want to get up and run every day. You can control that. And you know that if you do that, you're going to have an outcome that you're happy with. So I think to tie that all back, you want to identify the things that are predictable and the things that aren't. And if they're not predictable, figure out the actions you can control to help increase the likelihood of predictability.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I have no idea what Chad's actual question was, but that,
correct. Yeah, I didn't either. I don't think that answers his question, but I don't.
Well, I don't know. What was your question, Chad?
So
but I think you're bang on, Tone. You focus on those. You focus on the actions, and
I guess the good things tend to happen. You have to be aware of outliers, and then measure actions to increase the likelihood an outlier happens.
Yeah, and that's probably the question was, how do you become aware that you didn't just or the recipient of a big market tailwind, something that shifted, right? Like, COVID hit and everybody wanted to buy
hands-free stuff. Sure.
Hands-free stuff. Yeah. There you go. All right. Yeah. And so, boom, we now have a whole hands-free division. And 10 months later, it's totally, nobody cares about it. Well, you sold a bunch of hands-free switches. Like we all lived that. Everybody kind of sold a bunch of that stuff, all these conversions, and you ramped up for it. And then, but it wasn't. It was just a lucky kind of market.
It was a blip. Yeah.
Yes. To me, instead of a scalable system, it wasn't like this is now the new thing that we need to put systems. It was just a.
So you're wondering how to recognize that, or
how to be more aware.
What
I think that is the takeaway. I mean, you sent out the agenda to us, and I saw this point, and I was like, that's a really good point. Like, I think it's just important to be cognizant of the fact that certain growth is due to luck, and certain growth is due to actions that you are taking, and recognize which pieces of our growth are due to intentional efforts, and how can we magnify those intentional efforts, and what of the things are due to more luck, and just be cognizant of that fact. To me is the biggest takeaway, that like looking at your growth and figuring out what caused this and how do I repeat it.
So the best strategy that I've employed, this is going to be groundbreaking, so get your pen ready, is being curious and asking customers questions. I pay attention to what we sell, and I pay attention to how we operate and how our business runs through. And then I talk to our major customers about, what are you seeing? Why, is it, because I'm trying to understand, is this going to be a flash in the pan or not? Because you really have to, you have to really dig in deeper to understand what is the motivation that is driving the behavior. Which, because we talked about COVID, what was the motivation that was driving the behavior of going hands free? Well, that was fear, right?
Yeah.
It was fear. It was obligation of safety. It was, but the prime emotion is going to be fear. Well, I know that fear is not a consistent habit. It is an emotional response. So people make a rash decision and luckily spend some money, which was good for us. But are people going to live in fear forever? Well, no, not of this. They will of other things. But so, asking the question of, why, using that example, why are we going to hands-free? Why did you want to do? Oh, well, it's either mandated, and is this a temporary mandate, or is this like a new mandate? We have a classic one is the ADA, American Disability Act. Okay, that is now mandated, so we know that going forward it's levers and not knobs, because that is now a mandated. It's a regulation. So those are the kind of things that you can have some consistency and predictability on. But I think just asking questions with the customers and trying to understand the driving factor is going to be your best indicator of, is this a flash in the pan versus is this a new market segment?
One of the terms that I like to use is identifying, is this an event or a trend? And that actually applies to a lot of different things, human behavior, et cetera. So, what I just heard you say, Lars, is getting more intentional with asking questions so that you can understand, is this an event or a trend? Because you're likely to find that out if you just spend the time asking.
Yeah, we've had a similar situation where there's been a lot of a specific product that's been going that was obsolete, and we've been spending a lot of efforts replacing that product for the last 3 or 4 years, actually longer. And I'm well aware that there's going to come a time when that product is fully replaced, and then our revenue, we're going to need to replace that with something else.
Yeah.
So again, being aware, I didn't have to ask the customer because I know why the trend is happening. But to your point, it's a trend at the moment, but it's a trend that's going to end. So.
Okay, so kind of moving on to, this is actually one of I've always found this question interesting, or this topic interesting. But in scaling, and Tony, you were mentioning earlier the 25 to 35, you have to put in additional management, and we're all 50 plus employees north of that, right? So how do you find like a way in your organization to protect against your A players, your A team members getting all of the additional work? So hey, you're good, so let me give you more responsibility. Meanwhile, your B and C players are releasing responsibilities because they're not good at it, and they're just coasting and creating more kind of havoc around the business because, well, I don't have much to do, and this guy over here is doing everything because he does it well. How do you like be aware of that and protect against it, create a culture that kind of identifies that?
It's, this is, I just talked about burnout. You lose your best people more often due to burnout. Like if you have a superstar on your team, the scariest words for them is growth. Because when you say growth,
it means more work.
What they hear is, I've got to do more work. And so quite literally yesterday was our quarterly meeting where we stood up there and we were talking about, efficiency, growth, using these big words. And I was very cognitive of this. And so I had to almost redefine what I meant by efficiency, because when I say efficiency, our best guys hear that we're going to, stand there and start cracking the whip. We need more. We need more. It's always more. And their reaction to efficiency is, oh God, here we go. Oh, we're going to cut budget and make my life worse, and you're going to expect more out of me. And then when we say growth, it's like, oh, cool. So you want me to work even harder than I am? Even though that's not the intention of what we're trying, It's just that's it. And I got some advice from a guy named Derek Rochelle's. Actually, he was a volleyball coach way back when, and we were talking about picking a volleyball team. And you have about 13 players on a volleyball team, and you would spend literally like hours, like lamenting, sleepless nights, trying to figure out, like, okay, I've got about 5 different players, 5 different gals that could all be that 13th player, and 4 of them I'm going to have to disappoint. Mm-hmm. And I spent all this time on it. And Derek said to me, he's like, you know what? It really doesn't matter. Like this, pick the one that's going to get along with everyone, because she's not going to be playing anyway. She's not going to be super impactful. But you spend all of your time trying to like make these decisions and coach up the bottoms that you almost ignore the top end talent. And I guarantee you do this in your business, because you're so focused on, the people that are underperforming, and you want to bring them up or decide you want to move on from them, and spend all that you largely ignore the A players.
Yeah. And
it's, how do you remind yourself? How do you acknowledge that? Well, with us, it's, we use a scorecard, and we just look and say and we celebrate who has won. And it's just something we do every week. We have a winning channel, and we make sure to acknowledge the guys that are consistently, like, the person that's most in danger of leaving is the guy that crushes it week after week, day after day. And you don't, and he, because it's expected, because he's so consistent, they're so consistent, that you start taking it for granted. And next thing you know, you get a resignation letter, and you're like, how did this happen? It's like,
so one of the ways you're protecting against it is celebrating the wins.
Very intentionally looking at it, because I learned the lesson that we have to coach up our top end just as much, and we got to give them the TLC, the love and respect. And it's hard to do, because it's so easy to just focus on the ones you want to improve.
Well, the obvious thing there too, though, is to not tolerate the C players. I think that's the biggest thing. Like, I think that you see this everywhere, right? Like, the biggest way to scare off an A player is to tolerate a C player. Mm-hmm. Thoroughbreds want to run thoroughbreds. You say that all the time. And you have to be cognizant of it to not, overburden the A players for sure. But being aware of it, I don't know, that's my answer to everything, I feel like. But
it's really hard.
Yeah.
It is really hard, because it's the anomalies that stand out. And I believe that not everyone's going to be a superstar. You're going to have your rock stars.
Yeah.
It's really hard to do it. So, Chad's question of, well, how do you do it? It's, well, I would think, listening to what we're talking about right now, if you're listening to this podcast, I would say you should make a note of this and either throw it in your calendar or do something to build the habit to acknowledge the top end. One of the things that I've done in the past is I host a dinner at my house. I pick a handful of our top performers and bring them over, bring their wives over. We have dinner, we have some cocktails, we, have a personal evening together, because that's my way. And then, I just say, like, I have you guys here in my house because at a personal level, I really appreciate you. And that, I think, probably holds more weight and means more to them than, a slap on the bum or what, good game or whatever. I went off the grid there, but
the first time you've said that on this podcast.
The conversation up until that point made me think about the book, The Ideal Team Player. Where they talk about kind of the different categories of humble, hungry, and smart. And there's one on that Venn diagram that says the lovable slacker. And that's that C player that doesn't really get anything done, but everybody kind of likes them. And so it's hard to kind of get rid of them, or they don't actually figure out how to get work done. Everybody likes them. And I think we all have them on our team, right? And you go, so just more understanding of that, how to identify it, and then how to build your organization around either coaching those up or coaching them out is probably a big factor in making sure that the A players don't just get bogged down with all the work.
Yeah, something we've started doing more recently is taking, I don't want to call it an audit, but trying to document, like you have your organization chart and your accountability chart, yada, 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 but like really documenting the fundamental responsibilities of each role, and looking at, like, if you don't keep an eye on that, it's easy to start like loading responsibilities onto people. And so we've actually started building out a spreadsheet that kind of catalogs, here are the major responsibilities within our company. And here's the amount of time it takes. And you start to look at some people and it's like, oh my goodness, how do they do all that?
Yeah.
So being aware of what responsibilities people have and keeping an eye on that is valuable, because it's really easy as roles shift to start piling stuff onto somebody and then not be fully aware as a manager
Because
of
they're
what
good.
all they're doing. Yes,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So having like a visual representation of that written down has been so super helpful so far. So
Yeah, and I'll go back to, the emotion versus logic, because I continually harp on this. Why data and why fact is so important is because it keeps you honest. We look at the data and we see the top performers, and every week, and that reminds us, like, emotion is so fickle. It comes and goes. If somebody steps on your toe or somebody backs their van into a building, right, it is so easy to say, like, oh, that guy sucks. When data doesn't have room for that emotion. It's just, these are the facts. And that would be probably my biggest piece of advice, is try and take the emotion out of that situation. Get yourself some data that will
Chad really took himself out of the situation here.
And he's back. But if you can get yourself a system that will take that emotion out, it will it'll make it much easier for you to recognize that top end player, because it's just not a fickle scorecard, I would say.
I don't 100% agree with taking the emotion out, but I understand the theory.
Taking the emotion out of recognizing. I mean, I think you have to have the emotion in the in the acknowledgement, in the award, and make it personalized and that. But taking the emotion out of, like, if you don't have a score, here's classic. Okay, you're going through bonuses. Yeah. Well, I hope you didn't.
Are you saying, like, don't make it subjective, make it more factual based versus?
Yeah. So subjective, I would say emotions are subjective.
Sure.
Because they are strictly how you feel at any given moment. So yeah, maybe subjective is a better word for that, but try and make it objective. And if you focus on objective things, then you will recognize the high performers, and that will alleviate a lot of the issues that we are describing.
So one of the transitions out, so in the messy middle, then transitioning out of the messy middle, there's typically, before you start back into another iteration of it, there's kind of established protocols, roles, responsibilities. And, we just talked about this a couple of episodes back around the, delegating and understanding how to delegate. But from an emotional standpoint, just because, again, some of our watchers and listeners, they may be in different, or they all are obviously in different states of business growth. How did you guys deal with, or did it ever bother you from an ego perspective, kind of knowing that some of the best work in your company is being done by people other than you? So you previously had a task that you were awesome at, supposedly in your own head, and then it was delegated off to somebody else, and they're crushing it. How do you deal with the ego associated with that, and or was that ever at play during that transition?
This may sound weird, but to me, it almost boosts my ego seeing that happen. Like seeing, like, being able to coach somebody to do something the way I was doing it, and in many cases far better than I was doing it. That makes me happy. If I could sit here and do nothing all day, that'd be great. Make my ego feel wonderful. I mean, I don't mean that in like but seriously, like, I don't know. I think it's a selfish way to look at it. If you're saying I don't feel valuable, because I'm not doing anything. Like, look at what you've accomplished. If you're training a team to do what you're able to do, but better, if anything, that's enviable.
Yeah.
I mean,
it is, but it's very natural, I think, what Chad's describing. And, I'm curious, Chad, because you of the three of us should probably be the one answering this question, because you have set up a company and a system that largely operates without your direct injection every minute of every day of every decision. You have a team in place, and that you probably the last 15 years have been the guy to answer the question about everything every time. And now you don't. How do you reconcile that feeling? Like, it's not that you're not needed, but you're kind of not needed.
Yeah.
So how have you dealt with that?
Right after it happened, it was, I would say, very alienating and isolating, because somebody would walk in the room and say, "Hey, I have this issue," and your natural tendency is like, "Oh, cool, let me help," and somebody else says, "I'll take care of it," and it's like, "Oh, okay, well, I'll just not get involved,"
Mm-hmm.
And so you do feel like, I think the term I've used before is you feel like a visitor in your own office, because you're walking around going like, and I joke about it a lot now, because obviously I have a studio at our office, but I don't, and there's a table in the corner. I guess you could classify as my desk, but I don't functionally have an office. And so, when I get there, I just kind of wander around like, hey guys, what's going on? And so, yeah, it can feel a little bit like that. But then getting outside of that, it is significantly more fulfilling to walk around and see people with responsibilities, and people solving problems independently or working with each other to solve problems, and customers coming in going, "Hey, it's nice to meet you. I'm going to go talk to this guy because he can fix my problem." It's very fulfilling to be able to do that. As a matter of fact, this morning there was a couple of messages floating around on our team chat, and some things needed to be taken care of, and a couple of people popped in and took responsibility of it. And over the past several years, that would have been something I would have tried to take the lead on, but somebody else took the lead on it, and it's like very cool to see that, because that kind of just brings a little level of maturity of a business where everybody feels like they can take care of something, they can solve a problem, and they don't need interjection from somebody else to be able to do that. So yeah, I would say it's very fulfilling. I don't actually see it as a dig to my ego at all.
Yeah.
People don't need me.
Now.
Yeah. Well,
to me, it's. Sorry, go ahead, Chad.
No, I was going to say, I don't know that it hurt my ego before. It just was. It was just a such about face motion that it was just a little kind of, I guess, emotional reckoning of, I was involved and now I'm not. So, like, what is my new kind of purpose?
To me,
purpose.
To me, it's admirable. I mean, to be able to still be focused on growth and there's one way where it's not admirable, right? If like you're completely disengaged, and we talked about this on the episode we just referenced, where if you're completely disengaged and you have no idea what's going on and your employees don't respect you, that's one thing. But to be respected and liked by your team, and also to still have them solving problems without you, is like the perfect place to be, because it frees you up to solve bigger challenges. And that's the goal. I mean, I heard this at an HR conference like 7 years ago. You have dividers, subtractors, adders, and multipliers. And if you're solving a problem, you're an adder. That's good. But if you're helping others solve problems, now you're all of a sudden multiplying your
multiplier.
And that's where you want to be, though. I mean, it sounds funny, but that's ultimately what you want to be doing. And I had an employee ask me this a couple weeks ago. He said, why do you want to expand the business so much? And there's multiple reasons. I like helping people. I like creating a place that people can enjoy their job. But I also love solving complicated problems. And the bigger the problems you can solve, the more energy that gives me. And if you're solving $5,000 problems, you're spending your time on the wrong thing. So to me, it's an ego boost when your team is running without you. To me, it's a hurt to the ego if you're getting involved in too many things. So I think it's an admirable place to be where your team is solving stuff for you. And if you're looking at it in any other way, you're paying attention to the wrong things.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
And do you have any additional thoughts, Lars?
No, I don't. I hate that when people are like, "Hey, anything, Dad?" Like, no, I don't, and then they talk for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to take my own medicine.
Other than this,
yeah, I do have some thoughts. I agree that it is admirable. I would say it's also quite challenging. I would say maybe the key, and for lots of entrepreneurs, this would be very challenging, would be being patient. Yeah, being patient and let it happen, because everyone likes being loved. Everyone likes that dopamine hit of being of solving problems. All of that is completely natural and normal. It also is probably the biggest limiting factor in the growth of your business.
Yes.
Yeah.
So recognizing that, being aware of it, having a little reflection that, you found your right-hand man or right-hand woman, and being patient and letting it happen and letting some of that, pain happen. But also I would spend that time on exactly what you said, Chad, is, finding your new place, your new purpose, your new fulfillment.
It's interesting, and I think this is probably why I brought this topic up for this episode. If I look back on the reflection of the past decade, when I would say we were in the messy middle, and then 2023, and the tail end of 2023, I think we were starting to kind of come out of that, and we put new leadership in place, and the business was growing and being independent, and maturing, and it gave me the ability to step away, have clarity, and focus on what is the next big thing. And those 2 years, really, the business did fantastic, and it was awesome, and then now I feel like I am now walking back into the messy middle of the next phase of growth of our business. And I think I'm walking into it with my eyes wide open, where I didn't have that knowledge before. So now it's like, how does that change? Most recently, I kind of tossed out this vision for our company to be 30 by 30. And so that's a lot of work for us to do. And so I'm kind of jumping back in and head deep in certain elements of the business, but not on the day-to-day operations, which is a weird thing, right? So a lot more involvement, but very dead focused on certain elements. And I would see that happening much over the next couple of years in order to achieve that goal.
Yeah. And, the messy middle that you've experienced before, part of your challenge is going to be using that to help your next level of leaders, whoever they are, to understand and recognize what the messy middle is and how to get through that just from your experiences. So, and I think just saying that out loud just makes me think of Uncle Glenn, right? And that's generally what Glenn has done with us is, he's like, in my experience, this is what's happened, right? And that's, it's a little passing of the torch, Chad. So you can be Uncle Chad for a while.
Oh boy, I don't know that that's going to work. Is Tony, you have the next topic that we're going to be discussing, or is it Lars?
Lars.
Oh, good. At least I was well aware of that. Okay, so Lars has got our topic. I'm sure it is prepared because he is on top of things.
Yeah, so maybe vamp for a minute, Chad. You can tell us where where do the people find us? I too thought it was Tony up next.
I guess he just did
we just did the books,
the top 12,
13
or 14, 25
the
books.
The hidden list of books.
Yeah, oh boy. Okay, so our website is unlockedpodcast.com. You can find our contact information there if you want to connect with us on LinkedIn, send us a message, give us some feedback on what we're talking about, maybe give us some suggestions on things that you would like us to discuss around how our businesses have developed, some structures that we have in place, then some challenges that we have dealt with that and how we've dealt with them, because I would imagine you have either been there or you have already been there. So, connect with us and let us know that, and we'll be happy to respond and engage with you on that, as well as our YouTube channel. You can find the link on our website, unlockedpodcast.com, or you can search for Unlocked Podcast. Just tag Chad, Tony, or Lars in there, and it should pop right up, and you'll be able to see us, so you don't see any of the other Unlocked podcasts that are out there.
Yeah. Perfect. That gave me enough time to check my list here. This one, we're going to need a working title brainstorming session, but we're going to discuss the thinking models. Commonly, I'm going to say the level 1 thinking versus level 2 thinking.
Okay.
I think I've touched on it during an episode, but level 1 thinking is the type of thinking that, what color is the sky? Doesn't take any energy, it's blue.
Mm-hmm.
Level 2 thinking adds in complexity. And we in our industry talk about, training is so hard, and, the only way to do it is by just, you got to plop a guy in a van beside another person, and that's how they learn. But what can we do to change the way we run our business to move from level 2, everything is complex, into level 1, how do we make things repeatable, portable, all of that? Some of the strategies we've done, things that work, things that haven't. So I might have to flush out that title a little bit, but
level 1 to level 2 thinking and how it's applied to our businesses.
Yeah, how we can impact.
That is a terrible title, but it sounds like a fantastic topic.
Yes,
sounds like one that Uncle Glenn will thoroughly enjoy and probably would have some input on.
Yes, well, I'll maybe just ask him for a title, and we'll see how that goes.
Awesome. Well, it's been great chatting with you guys today. Thanks for walking down the path of the messy middle. I think we've all been in various stages of it, and our understanding of it. Hopefully, Tony will read the book now. So
I don't know. It sounds interesting, but Lars said it wasn't. So,
well, Lars also said Profit First was terrible. So
he didn't say it was terrible.
He said he hates the book. It's a dumb book, is what he said.
Well, it is kind of yeah, okay, fine.
I just got a message from my cousin Tony. He wanted to mention that I should tell Tony that he's only allowed to whistle while he's cleaning the house.